So now that we've finished talking about the stomach, the next organ it flows into is the small intestine, which has a more absorption function to it. So because of that reason, you'll find that the epithelium will also change. Now again, it's the site for completion of chemical digestion and absorption of nutrients. It's divided into three subdivisions. So you have your duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. So duodenum is the one that's closest to the stomach. And then you have your jejunum, which carries on with the absorption. And then you have ileum, which carries on with the absorption and connects to the cecum. And cecum is known as the transition point to the large bowel. Now, in the small intestines, there are modifications in the mucosa and submucosa of the intestinal wall, which is designed to increase functional surface area. Now, in the stomach, the folds were called rugae. Now, in the small intestines, they're called plicae because they're more circular in shape. And you're also going to find that you have villi, which are finger-like projections in the mucosal folds, and this is to increase the surface area and to aid with absorption. So let's talk about the histology of small intestine. So here you're going to find that the epithelium is going to change from our epithelium from our stomach. So here in the small intestine, due to the function of absorption, you're going to have simple columnar cells with some glands known as goblet cells and stem cells. You're also going to have microvilli, which is the brush border on the surface of the epithelium, which is going to help with absorption. And you're also going to find some crypts of lubricant. Now you're also going to find that in the muscularis mucosa lies immediately beneath the mucosa crypts and separates the mucosa from the submucosa. And you're going to find these lymphoid aggregates known as Peyer's patches. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And in the submucosa, you're going to have a lot of loose orderly connective tissue and large vessels. Now, from the large vessels, you're going to have these lacteals that are going to come up all the way to the villi, and that's to help with the absorption of nutrients. So all of our food that gets absorbed through our intestine will get dumped into these blood vessels and get drawn back into the submucosa. Now all those nutrients is going to collect in that large vessel in the submucosa and then get dispersed into different areas throughout the body where it needs nutrients. Now you're also going to find that in the duodenum, we have a unique gland called Brenner's gland, which we'll also talk about a little bit later. Now, in the muscularis externa, you're going to have two different directions as your circular and your longitudinal layer. Now, in between those two different layers, you're going to have your aqueduct plexus, which is your nerve supply, and that's going to sit between these two layers. And you're also going to find that you have serosa here, where you're going to have that simple squamous lining. So here, we actually have villi. So these finger-like projections are known as villi. Now, in this region right here, where it dips into the intestinal wall, those are called your crypts of Lieberkühn. Now, here is a close-up image of what a villi will look like. So here you can see your epithelium of that simple columnar cells with the brush border right on top. And then here we have that lacteal. So you have your lymphatic vessel, you have an arteriole, and you have a venule. And all of this collectively, when you have some food that's going to be absorbed, it's going to get dumped into this lacteal. And from this point, it gets further down into our submucosa. And that submucosa will then disperse our nutrients to different portions of the body where it will need those nutrients. Now, I mentioned the Peyer's patches, which are lymphoid aggregates. Okay, so that's our lymphoid aggregates right here. And what that does, it's going to help act as our small intestine's first line of immune defense against any microbial or dietary antigens from our food. So let's say you ate something bad and it may have been contaminated with some organism. Our Peyer's patch is actually going to help defend our digestive system from actually digesting that organism. So it's going to attack it. So we have different types of mucosal cells just within the small intestine. So we have enterocytes, also known as absorption cells. This is responsible for absorbing your nutrients from the intestinal lumen and transporting it across the epithelium to the lamina propria, where it's going to diffuse into that collection of your lacteals, and then it's going to get carried out to different parts of the body. And we also have goblet cells, which is going to secrete mucus to provide coating to the intestinal wall, as well as it has a little bit of a protection function. Now, occasionally, you're going to find you have enteroendocrine cells, which is here to secrete various hormones to help make the gallbladder contract to push bile out of the bile duct and release pancreatic enzymes. And that's going to have a lipid digestion role. Now, Paneth cells will sit at the base of these crypts, and it's eosinophilic, and it's going to have an immune function. Okay, kind of like our Peyer's patches. And then you have stem cells, which line the walls of the crypts and will continually replenish the intestinal epithelium, completely replacing all of the absorption and goblet cells approximately once every 4 days. So here is a close-up microscopic image of what the Paneth cells would look like. They're very eosinophilic, so they're very pink in color. And this is going to help have a role in controlling bacterial population. So here is a microscopic image of the duodenum. Now, with the duodenum, it's very important to note that the Brenner's glands, so that region right there, it actually secretes bicarb ions. So it has an alkaline component to actually combat the stomach acid from our stomach, just in case we have some stomach acid that comes in from the stomach. The duodenum, so the beginning part of your small intestine, actually has these Brenner's glands to help combat that. So it acts like a neutralizer. Because again, if our stomach acid gets into our small intestine, you're essentially burning it. Now again, whenever you're looking at a small intestine and you see these Brenner's glands, immediately recognize that you're looking at the duodenum. The jejunum and the ileum will not have this because it's getting further and further away from our stomach. So there's real no function for a Brenner's gland in the other two small intestines. So as you pass through the intestine and you're transitioning into the jejunum, you're going to find that you have no Brenner's glands. Okay, so you don't have that unique gland from the duodenum in the jejunum because it has no function here. So you're going to find that it actually changes a little bit where it actually looks taller. So it's going to possess taller and narrow villi and lacks these Brenner's glands. But you will find that it has more plicae, so more folds. And that's to help with absorption. So here you're going to find that there's an increase of goblet cells, there's an increase in these plicae folds, and an increase in Peyer's patches. Now there isn't much to decipher between the jejunum and the ileum, but you could distinctly tell these two from the jejunum due to the Brenner's glands. Now, in the jejunum and ileum, you will find Peyer's patches though, which is the lymphoid follicles. Okay, so little pockets. So in the ileum is where you're going to find the most Peyer's patches. Okay, you're going to find a lot of these lymph nodules. And how it appears is you're going to find these little nodules containing lymphocytes. And these are going to be involved with our immune defense. Now, in the jejunum, you'll find it in the Paneth cells. But in the ileum, you'll find it in your Peyer's patches. So here we have an image of our muscularis externa and our occiput plexus. So here we have our two different directions of our muscle. Now in between, you can see a little bit of a pinky area, and that's the occiput plexus, which is going to help control the contractions of that muscularis externa. So it's always going to have like a wave-like contraction that's going to help move content along. Okay, that's going to help with our peristalsis. To sum up the small intestine, here is a organizational illustration of the intestines. So in the small intestine, you have villi, and in the large intestine, you actually don't have villi, but you have similar epithelium. You're going to find that you have your 4 layers. You have your intestinal crypts in both of them, so crypts of Lieberkühn, and you're going to find that you have lymphatic nodules which are present. Now the Paneth cells are going to be in the small bowel, but not in the large bowel.